Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I'm back here. I am, of course, Mr. Roll, and I'm here with our second grade teacher, Miss Stubbs. Today is an interesting day, I would say. Today marks us, you and I, and all of us having done online learning now for an entire month. Today is week 4, day 5. And we don't have any announcements for today, but I just want to say that all of us here at your school are hoping for your safe return, and we hope that all of your friends and family are healthy and strong. Again, you guys have been doing a great job. It's not easy being at home for all of these weeks and having to work over the internet to do everything. I'm sure that some of you kids have maybe been fighting with some brothers and sisters, maybe. I know Miss Stubbs and I have been having a lot of fun with our own children, getting them to do work. So I'm sure it's been an interesting time for all of us. But guys, we're making it through. We are making it through. You know, this will come to an end soon, and we could not be more excited to see you in person when this all comes to an end. So anyway, Miss Stubbs, do you have a joke for us today?
I do have a joke. What musical instrument is found in the bathroom?
Musical instrument found in the bathroom. I don't know, Miss Stubbs, what musical instrument do you find in the bathroom?
A tuba toothpaste.
Oh, a tuba toothpaste. That's cute. Okay, I was wondering where that was going. That's excellent. A tuba
Beans,
toothpaste.
the musical fruit.
Bum, bum, bum. Tuba toothpaste. Okay. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, let's get to our pledge today. Please stand at attention at your homes or wherever you're watching this. Let's put our right hands over our heart and let's say the Pledge of Allegiance together. Miss Stubbs.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much again, Miss Stubbs. Ladies and gentlemen, let's end the month strong together and get all of our homework done.
Yay!
Okay. Yay! All right, see you online, guys. Bye. All right, welcome back, everybody. It's Mr. Roll here for week number 4, day number 5, and let's go over our agenda for today. As promised yesterday, today is also going to be another pretty light day of online school, which is nice. So starting off with life skills, we're going to continue talking about homes. We're going to review equity, mortgage, credit score, down payment, interest rate, and principal. So we'll be going over all of that together. Okay. We'll be talking a little bit in current events about how some states are getting ready for a limited reopen and some of like the positives and the negatives there from both sides. Then in history, we're going to be talking about politics in the Gilded Age. Yesterday, we talked about how the Gilded Age changed life for normal Americans. Today, we're talking about how it changed lives from a political point of view, I suppose, right? Next up, in literature, we just read chapter 5. We're going to talk about that, and then homework tonight is read chapter 6. In science, we're going to read a couple pages together, and then we need you to answer these 3 questions, and they're also posted on the website. In math, it is very easy. You're just going to be doing a summary of volume. There are 2 things you got to read through and do them, so it's super straightforward. And then for group 2 for math, you just have a PDF you have to answer. Did I repeat these from yesterday? I don't know. Anyway, it's pretty straightforward, and if I messed up the intro yesterday, I apologize, but this feels like I've done this already. Deja vu. Woo-hoo. Anyway, before we continue with our lesson for the day, I wanted to add, if any of you have anything that you would like to say, maybe if you'd like to embarrass a friend of yours publicly or something like that and send them a message, please email me a short video clip. We're thinking maybe 10 seconds long or less. To info@davincitree.academy, and we will include it in the announcements and pledge for the day, and we'll be popping those in the next week or 2. So again, email info@davincitree.academy, or you can even text the school phone at 520-441-0137 to send us your message for one of your classmates, friends, or family members. All right, let's go ahead and get to the life skills talk for today. Welcome to, this is Life Skills, and we are on week 4, day number 5. And as promised today, we are doing a review of terms. So yesterday, we spoke a bit about interest, okay, and about principal. So remember, today, again, we're just reviewing. So principal is the amount of money that you actually borrowed to buy something. And interest is the amount of money that you pay in order to do that borrowing, okay? It's the fees that you pay in order to borrow. Okay. Now, a couple days ago, we talked about equity, and I don't remember exactly the word-for-word definition I gave you, but equity is the portion of a home that you own. Okay, it's the portion or value of a home that you own. Okay, and so every month when you pay your mortgage. And again, a mortgage is a home loan, okay? Every month when you make your mortgage payment, you pay a certain amount of principal, okay? So you're paying back a certain amount of money that you borrowed for that home, and that principal turns into equity, okay? That principal that you're paying is equity. It's the portion of the home that you actually own yourself. Okay, and that's why buying a home is a really easy way to save money, because every month when you're making that mortgage payment, it's almost like you're putting money in a bank account and you're saving it for later, which is pretty cool. Equity does not just come from your home mortgage payment, though. Okay, equity is also generated because as you own a home over a period of time, the home will slowly become more and more valuable over time. And that increase in the value of that house actually adds to your equity. Okay. All right. Next up, we have a credit score, and so a credit score is it's a score that makes banks feel less or more comfortable lending you money. Oop, my thing is moving over. Okay. So again, a credit score is a score that makes banks feel less or more comfortable about lending you money. A perfect score, I believe, is an 850 on most of the credit score scales. A really high score is around an 800. A decent score is around 700. Kind of like a so-so score is 600 and below. Okay, and so you really want your credit score to be 700 or more in order to get good interest rates for borrowing money. Okay, and then finally, a down payment is the amount of money you have to pay up front for something. Okay, so if you are buying a car or buying a home or something like that, there's often a down payment that you have to make in order to make that transaction complete. Okay, and so usually there's a certain amount of money that you have to pay up front. We reviewed the other day that if it's your first time buying a home, your down payment needs to be about 10%. If you've owned a home in the past, your down payment needs to be around 25% in order to qualify, at least in the United States. I know a couple of you are watching in Australia and Canada right now. And for those of you who are, our English-speaking friends in different countries, it might be different for you in your country, but at least in the United States, we have 10% that you need to pay down payment for your first time buying a home, and then 25% for every house after that. Okay? All right, so that's it. These 6 vocabulary words are all the vocabulary words that you need to know for your life skills for our next quiz, which we will have on week 5, day number 1. That'll be your homework. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and continue on to current events. All right, let's go ahead and begin. We're on week 4, day 5, and we are talking about current events. I got my Steven Universe hat that one of you guys kindly gave me. I get to show it off a little bit. It's kind of fun. So today's topic is interesting. There's not too much to say about it, so this is going to be a shorter conversation. But today's topic is states reopening. So the federal government has left it up to every state to kind of pick and choose what days and what industries they're going to shut down and what, they're going to open up. And so because we don't have a unified national response on this, there are some pros and some cons. On the con side, Our lack of leadership, I would say, from the federal government, specifically from the Congress and from the executive, from the president, has led to America being the hardest hit country in the world for COVID-19. We are quickly approaching 1 million Americans sick with the disease, and this week we are crossing a terrible, terrible threshold. I just realized this minutes ago as I was prepping for this lesson. By the end of this week, more Americans will have died from COVID-19 than died in the entire Vietnam War. And that is due in large part to a lack of kind of foresight and planning on the federal government side. And that's bad. That's not good. Now, on the plus side, though, because we have local control over these kinds of things, different states have been having different repercussions from this virus. So, for instance, states like New Jersey, California, and New York have been hit extremely hard by the virus, and so it's incredibly important that they lock everything down. Whereas states like Arizona, although we have suffered, many of you have lost friends and loved ones, I know, from the emails you sent me. On balance, Arizona has not been hit as hard as some other states, and so we are able to keep certain businesses open that other states are not. And so as we come to the point where states are getting ready to reopen large sections of their economy or opening up the state entirely, we really have to balance two things. We have to balance the fact that people need to work because they have to pay the bills. And so that is a huge and very important factor. And then we have to balance out the fact that by going to work, people will more likely get sick from COVID-19. And so it's this really difficult balancing act. And so right now we have, like we talked about earlier, we have the highest unemployment rate in this country since the Great Depression. We have 22 million Americans newly out of work, and unemployment benefits from the states, including Arizona, are going to run out in a little bit of time. And so if we don't put people back to work, states are going to become bankrupted from having to pay tons of unemployment, and things are going to get worse. But if we go back to work, then the disease will more likely spread quickly because in most parts of the country we haven't seen the peak of the disease yet. And so it's really hard to say what the correct course of action is. From a public health standpoint, it's definitely we should keep the states closed for longer. From a humanitarian point of view and from a working point of view and from a budgetary point of view, I can understand why people think it might be worth the risk to open up the states earlier. Now, advocates of public health will say, well, Mr. Roll, if you open up the state too early and then a bunch of people get sick in the long term, that's going to have a much more deleterious or much more negative effect on the economy and on people's jobs, and people are going to die. And that's likely true. But on the other hand, if a state does open up and it doesn't turn out that badly, and a lot of people are able to go back to work, and a lot of people are able to pay for their food and pay for their homes and their rent, isn't that worth a try? And so it is this very difficult place that we find ourselves in. And again, there's no 100% right answer to this problem. Me personally, I do think that we need to keep everything shut down for a little while longer. That's my personal opinion. But again, it is a very, very difficult issue, and it is one that our leaders and our people, you and me included, are having to deal with right now to figure out what the correct course of action is. And so that is our current events for the day. That is a really big thought. Anyway, let's go ahead and start talking about American history. I'm just going to dive right in. So today, in Social Studies and American History, we are talking about the politics of the Gilded Age. Okay, and so yesterday we were doing some Khan Academy lessons, and we were discussing how the Gilded Age and the Second Industrial Revolution shifted Americans' way of life forever, to the point where you and I are right now sitting in probably a city, okay? Your family probably is not involved in agriculture, Gage, I'm looking at you. I know you guys are involved in agriculture, but if you're not Gage and you're in our class, your family's probably not involved in farming in some way, right? And so that is that result of the Second Industrial Revolution and the Gilded Age. And so the Gilded Age is also known for the politics. And so sometimes people know this as the golden age of the Republican Party, right? And so from Andrew Johnson, he was such a terrible president, okay? From Andrew Johnson all the way up until Wilson in World War I, that entire era was all Republicans, okay? And in fact, it only ended because Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt, not Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt got jealous of his former best friend, William Howard Taft, and he started the Bull Moose Party, and he split the vote. And it was only then that the Democrats were able to get Wilson elected to beat Taft for out of his second term. And so this Gilded Era was an era of all Republicans in the presidential office, and it was also an era that was marked by incredible amounts of voting. And so today, if we have 50% of eligible Americans turn out for a vote, we are really lucky. Usually voter turnout in, we call them off years, so every 4 years we have a presidential election, but in the off years, for the years in between, usually see voter participation in the mid-20s to mid-30s, right? And so only maybe a quarter of the percent, or the quarter of the electorate up to a third of the electorate actually bother to vote. And then in years when there is a presidential election, you often see presidential voting participation somewhere, I don't know, between like 50 and 60%, sometimes a little bit higher. But during the Gilded Age, the voting percentage was usually 3/4 or more. It was like 75% plus. People were really, really engaged in voting for their officials. Ironically, too, even though the Republicans held like the big national offices, like the presidency, right? Democrats held a lot of power in state offices, and it didn't matter if you were a Republican or a Democrat. The Gilded Age is known because the politicians were incredibly corrupt. They were known for openly taking bribes. We talked a little bit about. In the Civil War, we talked a little bit about Henry Seward and Thurlow Weed and their connections to an organization called Tammany Hall in New York, which became the most powerful American political arm during this era of the Gilded Age. And again, it was just rife with corruption. It was really bad. And these ultra-corrupt politicians teamed up with these corrupt business owners, and they did really unkind things to workers, like the very worst, the very worst incident of American labor deaths took place during this period in the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory in New York City, where they were. It was in a factory. I think it was like the 12th or 13th floor. It was really high up. And it was a garment factory that caught on fire. And because of the corruption in the political system and in the monitoring and security of people, the bosses that ran the factory actually had all of the doors were locked from the outside, so the workers would have to stay in and work. And so when the fire started, people couldn't even get out the emergency exits because the doors were locked and there were only 2 elevators that they could come in and out of. And I don't know if you know that much about elevators in a fire, but they don't work for very long once the building starts getting hot. And so everybody in this factory, so many floors above the ground, they ended up perishing or having to jump to their deaths. And again, it had to do with the corrupt politics of the time. Again, both Democrats and Republicans being in league with these big business owners. And the guys that ran the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory, they did get sued, but they were actually acquitted. And so they never really had any really bad consequences because they had so many friends in politics that helped save them. And so it was this really crazy time where again, you saw high levels of participation in voting, and incredibly high levels of corruption. And it's just weird that the two of those things existed together, right? Anyway, later on, we're going to talk about Teddy Roosevelt and why, to this day, he is still a hero of the American people because he fought that terrible corruption. But that is kind of the thing to know for the Gilded Age in politics. So two kind of heavy topics for this short day. The first one from current events, the idea that we have to open up states sometime, but how soon is too soon? And how late is too late? When do we open? Do we open, in the next week or two, or do we wait another month or two? And how many jobs are we going to lose? But how many lives could we lose, right? And so it's this terrible decision that our generation has to make. And then the politics of the Gilded Age too, another heavy topic, with all of the corruption. And why did so much corruption exist when there was so much political involvement from the people? It feels counterintuitive. Anyway, that's it for today's social studies lesson. Let's move on to literature. Hey everybody, so we are back for literature week 4, day number 5, last day for the week, and your homework last night was to read chapter 5. I think I accidentally maybe bled a little bit of the description from 4 into 5, read this a while back, and I'm just kind of looking at the chapters briefly to re-go over them. But in chapter 5, we find that they're still in the church, and this is like the remainder of the church day. And so again, we see kind of what the central place that the church took in the community. Not so much these days necessarily, but back then, especially in these small towns all around America, the central place of gathering would be the church or churches, okay? And that was a big part of who people were. And so in this chapter, I think most of the chapter is just basically the sermon and the prayers and the sermons and whatever, and just Tom Sawyer's kind of like thoughts about all of it. And as I recall, Tom doesn't even listen to the sermon. He looks at how long it is, and then he just kind of, his mind wanders off and he watches like a little dog play with a bug. And like, that's what he takes away from all of it. But again, it is kind of a cool glimpse into what life was like back then, and kind of like the social center of life for everybody was the Sunday church service, which is kind of something that we don't necessarily have anymore in our everyday lives. Even if you do go to church on Sundays or on Saturdays or however you believe, whatever your religion is. Usually not everyone is there, right? Like not everyone who's important in your life is there with you. Whereas back then, like everyone in town was there and all of his family was there and stuff like that. So anyway, homework for tonight, chapter 6. I'm sure you saw that coming. Again, do your dictionary definitions, write them 5 times each, and then take a photo of it and then send it into Mr. Barbero. Again, we do not want this typed because you just hit copy paste 5 times. We want it actually handwritten and then sent in to him. So it's a really easy way to get your literature grade at 100%. So guys, just read the chapter and do the easy lit homework, and we're good to go. Okay, so tonight your homework is to read chapter 6. Thank you. And gentlemen, welcome back to Science for the last day of week 4. Yesterday you finished watching the video on Pascal's principle from Khan Academy, and so today we're going to read a couple pages, and then you have a few easy questions to answer and email into Mr. Barbero. So let's go ahead and get started. So we are on the bottom of the page here, and we are learning about hydraulic systems, okay? So hydraulic systems are designed to take advantage of Pascal's principle. A hydraulic system multiplies a force by applying the force to a small surface area. The increase in pressure is then transmitted to another part of a confined fluid, which pushes on a larger surface area. In this way, the force is multiplied. A common hydraulic system is used to lift the heavy ladder on a fire truck. Okay? You also rely on Pascal's principle every time you ride in a car. The brake system of a car is a hydraulic system. A brake system with disc brakes is shown in simplified form in Figure 10. When a driver pushes down the brake pedal, he or she pushes a piston. The piston exerts the pressure on the brake fluid. The increased pressure is transmitted through the brake lines to pistons within the wheels of the car. Each of these pistons pushes on a brake pad, and the brake pads then rub against the brake disc, and the wheel's motion is slowed down by the force of friction. Because the brake system multiplies force, a person can stop a very large car with only a light push on a brake pedal. Okay, so let's take a look at this here. So this is how the hydraulic systems of a car can brake it. Okay, and so you see right there, there's the brake pedal. Okay, that you'd push on inside the car, and it pushes down a piston. Okay, and you see the brake lines that go into the brake fluid there. That those brake lines then push the brake fluid against the pistons that are against the brake pad. Okay, that push against the disc and then slow it down. Okay, so again, this principle, Pascal's principle, is useful in many, many applications that we rely on every day. All right, so Pascal's principle in nature. The sea stars shown in figure 11, these guys up here, use a natural hydraulic system called the water vascular system in order to move. Sea stars have rows of small suckers at the end of their hollow tube feet. Each tube foot is filled with fluid. A valve is located at each foot. When the valve closes, the foot becomes a hydraulic container. As the sea star contracts different muscles, it changes the pressure in the fluid. The change in pressure causes the tube foot to push down on the sucker. By the coordinated action of all of its tube feet, a sea star is able to move, even to climb straight up rock surfaces. Okay, it's kind of cool, and you can see the little tube feet over here. We can zoom in on them. Okay, and again, they use Pascal's principle in variable pressure. You see that with the fluid in order to stick to things and move around. And it's pretty cool. I think if you've been paying attention in my class, we've seen a couple nature videos where they speed up the motion of starfish, and they actually, you know, when you watch them in fast motion, they're actually moving around almost like an animal or a bug or something like that. It's pretty cool. Well, I guess they are animals, right? Okay, so today you have a couple questions that you need to answer, and go ahead and email the answer to those questions to Mr. Barbero, and that's it for your homework for the weekend for science. You're good to go. Anyway, have a great weekend, but before you do, let's jump into math. Math today is going to be combined for Group 1 and Group 2, so it'll be quick and simple. Thanks, guys. All right, Groups 1 and Groups 2. Today is week 4, day 5, and as promised, the homework load is pretty light. So for group number 1, all you have to do is go through Khan Academy. There are 2 quick reviews for you to do. I should do it over here. There you go, like peace sign. There are 2 quick reviews on Khan Academy for you to take care of. I think one of them is just something that you read through and then you answer the questions, and then the second one is just simply a review. It's to sum up our week on talking about volume. For group number 2, we are summing up the week of working with systems of inequalities. You have a PDF and some inequalities that you need to graph. Okay. Now the PDF, take your time on it. It should take you a little bit of time. However you would like to turn it in, if you want to do it on normal paper and sketch it out, that would be okay. If you would like to put it in a Pages document and, get fancy with it and do screenshots of graphs and color it in like that, you can do that. So get creative with how you want to turn it in Group 2. Whatever is easiest for you, we will definitely accept. So anyway, Group 1 and Group 2, that's it for math. Again, I told you it was pretty short, pretty easy. If you are looking for the links or the document, just simply check the website for week 4, day 5, and they are linked below. And you're good to go. Have a great weekend, guys.